partisanship, left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thank you so much for joining us here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show. We're live on WYSL until 2 p.m. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Of course, we're streaming online too, in full audio, I hope, on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, Free Solution group, the Kevin Wilson page, and Kevin Wilson Twitter. Wherever you're listening today, thank you for being here. Leave a comment online if you want to participate in the discussion. If it's good, we'll put it up on the screen for the video streaming and read it on air. So today, I want to talk about a story that caught my eye yesterday. I wanted to make sure I look into it a little bit more related to possible gain of function research happening here in the US, whether or not people are still experimenting with viruses in the same way that may or may not have caused the COVID-19 virus to be released in China from the Wuhan labs. Is that happening here? So there's a big sensational the New York Post story about that. We're going to dig into that. Plus, something I haven't talked about yet, but it's kind of been a thing for a couple of weeks, is whether or not Pfizer had misled folks on transmissibility of vaccines. I figure those kind of go together as part of a theme. And then, if we get through those, don't get distracted, don't meander too much. Maybe we'll talk about some recent polls that came out related to New York State politics. We'll see what we get to. But again, give us a call if you want to participate in the show, if you want to weigh in on any of these topics, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comment online. So let's start with that sensational New York Post story about this. And that's the one I saw. I don't know if that's where it originally started, but it looks like it might have been through Fox News. But the headline is "More Lethal Strain of COVID Created in Boston University Lab," researchers say, right? And opening paragraph is researchers at Boston University say they have developed a new COVID strain that has an 80% kill rate following a series of similar experiments first thought to have started the global pandemic that began in China. The variant, a combination of Omicron and the original virus in Wuhan, killed 80% of the mice infected with it, the university said. When mice were only exposed to Omicron, they experienced mild symptoms. All right, so that sounds terrifying, right? It sounds like, hey, they're doing around, they're messing around with some of the same research that may have released COVID-19 into the public, may or may not. Again, we don't know 100%, but there's enough evidence to make you wonder, right? And in this case, it's happening in Boston. It's happening in a populated area, and it's part of a medical research facility, right? So this isn't just like some random folks messing around. This is part of the of an institute that does this sort of thing, the National Emerging Infectious Diseases Laboratories, right? So that's what they did. And actually, the story started with the Daily Mail. Apparently, that's where it first started, and it's been kind of spreading from there, so to speak. And so they were doing this research on COVID and a few different variants of this, and what they were trying to do, in this laboratory, in this lab, is to kind of see like what parts of the virus are associated with more severe forms of infection. And from that research, in theory, you should be able to say, like, okay, well, as we develop new treatments and as we develop new vaccines or whatever, what's the thing we want to go after to make sure that this virus can be less deadly. And there's some merit to that, right? Like there's good reason to want to do some of that stuff, right? If this research could be used effectively to treat diseases, particularly COVID, which is still a problem for many folks. And if it could be used to learn about other similar type of coronaviruses and develop effective treatments or prevention for them, great. That's the hope that you get out of this stuff. And as I understand, that research in and of itself is different from gain of function research. This is researching some variants that exist at that. Now, the controversial part about this is like a virus that was kind of modified in the lab, not necessarily to make more deadly, but to modified for use on mice, right? And in doing so, again, uh they made a virus that is very deadly to those mice, but that's their way of being able to study the impacts of this. The original virus that they also used to study also had a very high mortality rate for mice. So according to that laboratory, is like 80 to 100% of the infected mice would succumb to the original COVID strain too that they were using in laboratory research. So it's not as terrifying as it sounds. It's kind of part of research that's been going on for a while, but there are definitely some policy implications that we want to think about here. Again, in terms of, hey, did a lab leak in China cause this to happen? Is it prudent for this type of research to exist in a heavily populated urban area? Is it necessary for it to exist in that area, right? Like, can we do it somewhere else? Can we do it somewhere more isolated, right? That's part of the problem with Wuhan. Like now, it's hard to tell. Like, did this virus just emerge out of a wet market, or did it emerge out of this lab? It's hard to say which. And there's plausible deniability in that for the government of China. Um, but these things do exist. They do, they're out there. There are several laboratories in the U.S. Doing this sort of research on viruses. This is like a level 3 laboratory, which is, it has a certain level of safety protocol associated with doing that sort of research. They have to be in sealed rooms, special air ventilation systems, special personal protective equipment, all that stuff. All right, cool. They're taking a lot of precautions. In theory, they're doing that and Wuhan too, but accidents happen, and are the things that we learn from this type of research valuable enough to conduct it in the first place? Obviously, these folks feel yes. And again, I don't know enough about this type of research. I'm not this type of expert. I'm just a layman like most of you listening on this program, and just worried, understandably, like, well, is doing this type of research exposing us to an additional danger? Do we really gain that much from it? How many lives are going to be saved versus the risk of an accident happening? And I don't know. I'm sure someone's done that calculation, presumably, and to that end, is there any obligation on universities or governments to inform the public, inform the community that could be impacted by any potential risk of leak of the type of work that's going on there? Is there or ought there be a requirement of making sure the public knows the risks of living near this area? Maybe. That's I think a question worth having. And part of me again kind of errs on the side of like, there are smart people doing great work, but we've seen how things could have potentially gone wrong in Wuhan, and how that could have made released a virus that may have killed millions of people. And that's a serious that's a serious thing to contend with. What sort of accidents could happen? Again, now I'd say, they're not doing gain of function. That's not what's happened. This is what they say about it. Not doing gain of function. They're not trying to make the virus more deadly. They're just trying to study what makes the COVID-19 and its variants deadly to begin with. It provides valuable science in understanding how to create cures and vaccines and other things. Sounds like we have a caller on the line, though. Joe from Schenectady. Joe, what's on your mind?
Hey, I was thinking about this whole gain of function thing as to like what started this. If this is something that's been done with like flu viruses, if it has, how has it worked for so long and then stopped working with this new pandemic? What procedures weren't followed, and how we have to figure this out? And if we're doing it in the United States and we don't know what happened in China to cause the release of it, we have to take a second look at it and figure out if they're doing it just to amp up vaccines, then that could be okay. I mean, they did that with the flu. That's the reason they say they do it with the flu. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, right. Like in theory, this isn't supposed to be happening, right? In theory, again, this isn't gain of function. And if it were discovered, if there were any gain of function happening, like the virus was more deadly in what they're studying, they'd have to shut down the experiment, right? Like officially, that's what happens. Officially, that's also what happened in Wuhan too. But the Chinese government and some of the other players involved have kind of been less than cooperative in helping us as like the entire world to understand like what happened, where something may have gotten out, and if they contributed in any way to releasing a virus into the public. But in theory, like this type of research, which isn't necessarily gain of function, just tells you what elements of the virus are the actual causes of serious infection, and how do you prevent that, right? So as I understand, this has produced like scientific breakthroughs in different ways, and it can be valuable. Now I think it could. It's just you have to be extremely careful with this. So Joe, thanks so much. I hope I answered your question well. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks.
And if you want to call into the show too, give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back with more on A Free Solution in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Hey, this is Kevin Wilson, host of A Free Solution. You ever need a tool for just one project, but didn't want to spend the cash for something you'd use just once or twice? Well, there's a new tool library in Rochester where you can borrow just the thing you need instead of buying a new one. It's called the Tool Shed from the Southeast Area Coalition, and membership starts at just $25 a year. Use it for home projects or to support your business. Learn more and become a member at seektoolshed.org. That's SEAC toolshed.org.
Only available in the WISL store at WISL1040.com. Official top quality tees, hoodies, and coffee mugs depicting the colorful WISL logo, or the already famous Mount Worstmore line of merch depicting Mount Rushmore style are for worst presidents. Of course, you know who is front and center up on that mountain. WISL official items make perfect gifts, or they're a great way for you to make a personal statement. Locally produced and sold only in the WISL store at WISL1040.com.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thanks again for joining us here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And if you want to call in, we had Joe from the last segment. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online, streaming on the Free Solution Facebook page, YouTube channel, group, Kevin Wilson pages, wherever you're listening today. Thank you for being here. And again, what we're talking about today is this story that came out a couple days ago about potential research done on a deadlier form of virus, of COVID virus, happening in the Boston area and at Boston University. And it's related to, a study that came out, like it's one of those preprint studies that went online. Someone saw like the 80% thing and then freaked them out. And again, some of the funders too, like the national funders are a little bit like worried about this. They're like, well, we didn't know exactly what was happening. Again, what the intent of this was, as I'm reading more about this is they create a hybrid virus to like, oh, we think this certain spike protein is what makes a difference with Omicron. And so we're going to try to graft that onto a one of the original versions of the virus. Oh, when we did that, it was still very deadly. So that obviously wasn't like what made Omicron less deadly than earlier variants of the virus. And again, you could see how this could be useful, but also incredibly risky, right? And whenever they do that, there's supposed to be protocols in place to say, like, okay, here to the funders, here to the like kind of research panels at the university, all that stuff. They're supposed to clear all that and be like, okay, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it and what what outcomes we're like testing and all that stuff. So it's supposed to have all this all these checks associated with it. But if they were kind of going outside of what the expected research was from the funders and potentially putting the public at risk with this, it's a big deal. Like it's probably stuff that, like, again, we need to be really careful with, or at least like it needs to be under intense scrutiny by folks who know what the heck they're doing. Now, again, do I fully know what I'm talking about? No, I'm a layperson, just like anyone else listening to this. We're just trying to figure out, like, well, where is this research happening? Is it happening in our area? And is that something that's dangerous? And and if not, then like we need to know why and how, and like how we are kept safe from this sort of thing. I think that's all fair. And so I'm going to continue to watch this stuff. It's interesting. It caught my eye because, again, if that were happening, if there's something that looked like gain of function were happening, right, in our country, it's supposed to be illegal. It's supposed to not be happening. And if it is happening, then that's a problem. Because again, we've decided that that's supposed to be illegal. That even if there is some potential scientific breakthroughs to come from that, there's certain things that we've understandably decided pose far too great of a risk to the public to continue doing. And that's why our government's not supposed to fund that stuff. And again, did the NIH and other groups end up funding that sort of research in Wuhan? Maybe. It seems like there's maybe a little bit of evidence there to suggest that might have happened, and it's worth continuing to look into. I know that they say they didn't, but I know that's one of those ones. It seems like something sketchy might have been happening on that route. All right, kind of on a related note too is another story going around about Pfizer and whether or not they misled the public on the transmissibility of COVID when someone is vaccinated, right? And so this is an interesting one, right? So like the story goes is that like Pfizer was testifying before like an EU, like a European Parliament commission, that they hadn't tested the ability of COVID to prevent transmission before it entered the market, right? So when you got vaccinated, did Pfizer have data that said you are less likely to spread COVID to other folks, right? And they said no, they didn't have that data. And so this feels like a gotcha moment because a lot of folks ended up talking about that, like, oh, I'm going to get, including me, because I understood it to be that way, does getting the vaccine prevent you from getting other people sick, right? And intuitively, you'd think, well, yes, right? Because I'm vaccinated, I'm less likely to get enough of the virus to not only make myself sick, but also to, if I'm less sick, I am more likely to, or less likely to spread that virus to other folks, to just like less stuff to spread to other people, right? So like intuitively, it kind of makes sense to do that, right? And that's the outcome that we would expect. But the actual science of that is complicated, apparently, right? It's complicated in the sense that if that individuals have different reactions, right? It doesn't 100% prevent you from getting sick. You may still be infected but asymptomatic and able to spread the virus to other folks, or anywhere along that spectrum, right? You may get sick, or you may be asymptomatic, or you may not get it at all and not spread it as much. And so trying to measure that is difficult, and is apparently not a requirement for putting that in the market. So they never tested that as part of it. But there were certainly a lot of folks, including from Pfizer, who kind of implied that that was the case, right? And again, that's what got me to, because there's this intuitive understanding of like, well, if I don't get sick, I'm less likely to get other people to get sick. And what they were selling at the time was, well, you're less likely to get sick. That they're talking about, 80, 90, 100% effectiveness, right? Like they're talking about having these incredibly effective vaccines, but you got to read the fine print on that, right? It's sure they were doing that. They did do that. They do prevent serious illness in most cases, right? But are they going to prevent you from getting others sick? Well, no, not necessarily. So yeah, they work in some senses, right? They just don't do everything. And that might be good enough. It's just that it became such a weird, like, virtue signaling culture issue, like on both sides. Like, y'all have heard me talk about this. I have no love for people who kind of reflexively anti-vax. I'll kind of, I'm not for mandates, but the anti-vax kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. But the folks on the left were like pushing this as like, hey, this does absolutely everything. You need to do this 100% reason. It was kind of the reason for pushing mandates on the state level is like, well, we don't want healthcare professionals to have other people get sick. Therefore, we have to require everyone to get vaccinated so that their patients wouldn't get sick. That was the implication of the mandates. And if that implication was based on, at best, a misunderstanding of the value of vaccines, and again, at worst, a willful and deceitful misapplication of what this was supposed to do, then that's a problem. And that's something that, as we think about how to apply mandates in the future at schools, at healthcare facilities, and anywhere else, what does this thing actually do? Is it about personal protection, or is it about protecting others? If it's about protecting others, there's a lot stronger of a case for having people get a vaccine. If you can prove that, great. That's a good reason to require a vaccine, or at least a reason. Doesn't necessarily matter to be in favor of a mandate, but that's a reason to do that. But if it doesn't actually do that thing, and it's just about personal protection, if you're reducing your personal risk, and it ends up being a individual decision of you, your family, your children, whatever, then that's a totally different matter. That what level of risk you decide to take on in getting vaccinated or not vaccinated is your business, if that doesn't have the negative externality of impacting other people. And I say this, as it's kind of like the core of libertarianism is don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. I could kind of get a mandate that says, okay, if you're exposing other people to risk in a situation, then you could make an argument, not always agree with, but you could make an argument for a positive obligation to have to do something. And you could say the same thing we do with like driving, right? That's kind of the justification for getting a license. Yes, you have to prove that you are capable of, driving safely this possible multi-ton vehicle, because to not be able to do so safely exposes others to risk, right? That's the justification for a license. All right. So when we come back, we'll continue talking about this a little bit, and then maybe we'll jump into some New York State politics. Give us a call if you want to weigh in on these issues. 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Pray for the USA. AM 1040 Avon Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, and FM 95.5 Spencerport.
Here's the latest forecast from the News 10 NBC Weather Center for tonight. Mostly cloudy skies, still a little breezy, bit chilly. A couple of lake effect showers of rain and wet snow. Same deal on Thursday. One more of these chilly fall days to get through, mostly cloudy. A couple of scattered showers. We'll turn the corner on Friday. Weather gets nicer with some sunshine in the 50s, and we're jumping into the 60s for the weekend. I'm Rich Cadelia, WYSL.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Savings are crisp, colorful, and cool at Victor Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Anthony Drive off Route 96 in Victor, where you can pick your favorite pickup. The 2022 Ram 1500 Classic Warlock Quad Cab 4x4 pickup in diamond black crystal pearl coat is just $369 a month for 39 months. Must be Conquest or returning lessee. The 22 Jeep Compass Latitude 4x4 is just $299 a month for 36 months, wearing billet silver metallic clear coat. Must have Conquest or be returning lessee. Or the 22 Jeep Renegade Sport Utility is only $299 a month for 36 months in Alpine white clear coat. Must be Conquest or returning lessee. $2,500 cash or trade. First payment. DMV taxes and fees due at signing. Other conditions may apply. See dealer for details. There's a great selection of the best used vehicles too. Come check us out. We're here to fully serve Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram customers in Victor, Canandaigua, Macedon, Fairport, and throughout the Metro and Finger Lakes. Victor Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, 6560 Anthony Drive in Victor.
As the weather cools off, you've probably heard about local energy suppliers asking for a steep rate increase. After recent record gas prices, think what it might cost to heat your home or business this winter. Save your comfort and your wallet with Air & More infrared zone heaters, which may save up to 50% compared to just using your furnace. Air & More zone heaters let you turn down your central heat and stay cozy in the room you're using. Heat from Air & More infrared is healthier. No combustion that dries out your nose, sinuses, and skin. You get even quiet heat that fills rooms with warmth, not dust and blower noise. Air & More heaters are completely safe, no exposed hot surfaces, no heating elements to pose shock or fire hazards, and are completely safe around pets and children and have easy roll casters to make relocation a snap. With new copper PTC technology, there are no bulbs to replace ever. Save big on heating bills. Buy direct and get lowest prices anywhere on the web. For a limited time, save even more with a promo code WYSL. Call 800-707-8725 or visit air.more.com. air.more.com.
I'm Stephen Nichols. Since 1984, Nichols has been family operated and a trusted name for home service. We provide plumbing and electrical installation and service, and I am thrilled to announce that we are growing and looking to add to our scope of services. We are looking for a professional handyman who is skilled in drywall repair, carpentry, and more. If you are interested in joining the best team in Rochester, call 585-299-3101 or visit nicholselectric.com to fill out an application.
All-Star Custom Apparel and Design is your local source for screen print, embroidery, vinyl transfer, online storefronts, logo designs, decaling your vehicles, and promotional items. Stop in and see us at 45 High Tech Drive in Rush. Check out our Facebook page or visit our website, allstarcustomapparelanddesign.com. All-Star will get your name recognized with customer service that is second to none. Call 585-623-4000 to see what All-Star can do for you.
WYSL. WYSL.
Hi, this is Joe Santani from the radio show Medicare U. Join me along with my partner Andrea Zaleski from T65 and Beyond every week as we explore the ins and outs of Medicare. We're your healthcare translators. If you're 65 or will be soon, you'll need this important Medicare information for the best coverage, best health, and best price. Medicare U, Tuesdays at 7:30 and Sundays at 1 on the WYSL stations.
WYSL.
A free solution on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today. Thank you so much for joining us here this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. We're live here on WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call if you want to participate in the show, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. Or leave your comments online on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, Free Solution group, the Kevin Wilson page, or Kevin Wilson Twitter, wherever you listen today. Appreciate you all being here. And we got one comment from Dr. Steve Becker on Facebook, who says, "It's not a vaccine. The CDC is corrupt!" Exclamation point. Yes. So yeah, I mean, Steve, I mean, it is a vaccine. It's a different type of vaccine. It's the mRNA vaccine that, you know, they're the different types, right? Like mRNA. So just you inject mRNA into your body, it causes your cells to create certain things that antibodies flag as suspicious. That's how it works. It's a type of vaccine. It's just different from like the other types of vaccines where they use like weakened or dead viruses to do that, right? Again, whether or not it's effective or whether or not companies or politicians misled people is kind of where I'm more concerned, right? Like it's more like in this case, was Pfizer in their marketing and in their understanding of this vaccine, did it get ahead of what they could actually prove what was the impact of their vaccine, and did politicians get ahead of that and change policy based on a misunderstanding of this? And Steve, you know, why'd they have to change the definition of vaccine? Yeah, I mean, they expanded it again. It's like, it's to me, Steve, like I think this is a cool technology, right? Like if we could start to expand the use of mRNA technology to do like way more things, I think it's cool as heck. Like I sincerely, it is a medical miracle that we could use to quickly develop vaccines and other medicines that could help our body produce the things that we need to gain immunity from viruses. Again, whether or not that's effective across all sorts of channels, there's still lots of research that needs to be done. But to me, it's an exciting technology. Again, why they have changed? They've changed the definition of vaccine before, though. You know, and other person says efficacy is a weasel word. I mean, maybe. I mean, you know, how effective is it? It just depends. It's important for particularly politicians to understand what the words, what these types of words mean, and how pharmaceutical companies or anyone else uses them, particularly when you're creating policy around something like a mandate around requiring people to do this, right? Like, because those have serious implications, right? Especially if they get it wrong or if they infringe on people's liberty without actually creating a significant benefit. And this other comment from Joseph says the vaccine is actually a shot. It's like the flu shot. It will help stop COVID and severity of it, but doesn't eliminate it like the polio vaccine. Yeah, and polio vaccine was overall very effective, although interestingly enough, coming back in parts of Eastern New York, in part because people aren't getting the polio vaccine as much because everyone's like, oh, it's gone. And so that's something that we'll have to watch, right? And again, to be clear on like the transmissibility issue, right? Like here's like my thing on like the CDC and the FDA and stuff, that they set like a certain number of requirements. It takes a long time to get through most of these requirements. And even under the emergency use authorization, it took a long time. In fact, the first mRNA vaccine for COVID was developed in like January or February of 2020. Like they figured it out very quick. It was just a matter of like, all right, we need to effectively test for this thing and determine its safety if administered on a mass level. And then that took a very long time, months and months. And that's why we didn't end up getting it for another year and several months later. They had to do trials for it, right? And but in order to get that passed, though, is they have to meet certain. It has to be safe and it has to actually prevent people from getting sick. Okay, transmissibility is not one of them because it's complicated to measure, but they sold it on that and they made policy decisions on that. And again, that's the problem to me, is making policy decisions based on something where the data isn't fully there yet. There are some studies that suggest that transmissibility was reduced for the original version of the virus, and this is where I kind of get back to like the FDA and the CDC the FDA specifically take a very long time to get this stuff approved, and it's not able to move quickly enough to actually address emerging disease threats, right? So as new variants come out, the FDA ended up approving like a fourth booster that was based off of the original like alpha variant, when what we actually need is the Omicron or whatever next variant exists for COVID. It's like what we do with the flu, right? And they're kind of doing this a bit slower, but they try to guess what is the next version of the flu gonna be, and then they make a vaccine based on kind of what's happening in the other hemisphere and whether or not that's gonna be effective. Like some years it's basically dud, give you with 10, 15, 20% protection. Other years is really effective, right? With mRNA, the cool thing is you can develop this stuff really fast. Once the technology is proof safe and you're able to get voluntary test subjects to try it out, or even move towards things like challenge trials, which we don't allow here, but probably should be allowed. You could figure out very quickly, what's going to work and protect people and save lives from that. So again, yeah, is the CDC corrupt, Steve? Yeah. It kind of is. Is the FDA corrupt? Yeah. There's a lot of things that are wrong with it. Is it so bureaucratic that literal lives are lost because they're not able to move quick enough? Yeah. So like my criticism of like most vaccine policy is that it moved too slow. And with this one in particular, it moved based on a misunderstanding, based on kind of cultural and tribal preferences of what the vaccine did and didn't do. It ended up getting oversold and caused a massive amount of confusion for folks talking about it. Again, way oversold what it could do effectively, and it kind of comes back to the the white lies thing. The whole thing coming back, like it's been the story of this whole pandemic, right? Like it happened with the masks too. Like, well, we're going to tell the public that like masks aren't going to work because we want to actually preserve the medical supply of N95s for frontline providers, not actually because like we think it's not going to work. That happened. It's hard to remember that because so much goofy stuff has happened in the last couple of years. That was part of that story in the beginning of the pandemic, because no one wear a mask. Well, while secretly buying up all the masks. They're just trying not to get the public to make a run on those medical supplies. Like what a weird thing. And then now we know like mask mandates. The mandates don't actually work. There's certain type of masks that work well for personal protection, but did the mandates work? No, especially since we applied them in a strange way. Like we can get to the bottom of like the data of all this stuff. There's also, and I've made recommendations for his podcast before. There's a good podcast on that Andrew Heaton does, Political Orphanage, where they go over all the data of like, well, what actually worked. What worked in Sweden, what worked in New York versus Florida, where did we have massive policy failures? What are the trade-offs necessary for having low COVID deaths in a place like Australia? Because they did have very few COVID deaths there, but there was a trade-off. They put their lives on hold for a couple of years. Is that worth it? I don't know. I don't know that it was. I don't know that I would make that decision. And that's really, again, the point of all this stuff, right? Like, specific to going back to the Pfizer thing, is we made policy decisions based on an overselling of this. And again, the phrase that was used is a little bit strange too. That said that they couldn't do transmission studies because they were going at the speed of science, which I know folks have kind of made a bunch of jokes about. But yeah, what was kind of a strange turn of phrase, right? And but it is kind of how these things work. So this is what I'm gonna continue doing with this stuff, right? Because I try to keep an open mind about this stuff. Folks share this with me, and I do listen to this stuff. It's, I want to get to the crux of, like, what does the actual data say in these areas? Like, how do we know that data is accurate? And then, did politicians use the best data available at the time to make a good decision? Or did they get to a tribalist mentality where, well, if you are skeptical of any part of the vaccine, then you're a bad person and, want to kill grandma, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not how most folks were. They're worried about it because of new technology. It's fine. Okay, what's the data say? Where does this actually go? What does this actually do? And then I always err on the side of we should preserve as much liberty as possible. And if you're going to do anything to take away my liberty or the liberty of my neighbors, you better have a darn good reason for doing it. It better be ironclad. And even then, it's not always worth the trade-off. But it better be ironclad. It wasn't in this case. All right, thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. If you want to weigh in on this topic or anything else, give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000. We'll be back here in a few minutes on A Free Solution.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to SimpleTech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that SimpleTech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at SimpleTech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at SimpleTech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. SimpleTech Innovations.
As a veteran of the United States military, I can finally get the opportunity to enjoy special events, things that we couldn't afford, thanks to VetTix.
Every empty seat at a concert, a game, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Visit vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
WYSL. Getting podcasts of your favorite WYSL shows is easier and better than ever. Use your favorite device, PC, mobile, or tablet to visit WYSL1040.com. Simply click on the podcast tab to select, listen, download, and share instantly. Works great with any wireless device. No additional apps are necessary. Podcasts of all our local shows are easier to access and play, so share them with your friends. And thanks for listening anywhere, anytime to the voice of liberty, the WYSL stations. A free solution on the WYSL station.
All right, welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today. Thanks again for joining us here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We're live here on WYSL until 2 p.m. Give us a call, 585-346-3000. That's 585-346-3000 if you want to participate in the show or leave your comments online. We'll get to this this one from a Facebook user too. Can't say what your name is, Facebook user, but just lists the definition of vaccines as a substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or more several diseases prepared from a causative agent of a disease, its products, or its synthetic substitute treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease. And then presumably the same person said, provide immunity is not what it did. He means like the COVID vaccines. I mean, it did. It does provide immunity. Again, it works against the original variant of virus, which is why it was, or how it was created. As the virus evolves and changes, it's going to become less effective, but it does provide some level of immunity. It prevents many people from getting sick. It prevents many people from getting severely ill. And the data backs it up. Again, the vaccination rates are correlated with the number of excess deaths that you see in an area. There's data to back that up. Again, I'm going to follow like what the data says on this. And again, my criticism of this is that vaccine development honestly needs to move faster, and that the government gets in the way of doing that. And again, there's a level of risk that individuals could take in doing that. And so you can get through not just the emergency use authorization that we have for these types of vaccines, but like full authorization should move quicker if you're able to effectively demonstrate safety and efficacy in a test population over a period of months rather than a period of years. There ought to be ways of doing that, because the next time we have a pandemic, which will happen, it's not an if, it's a when. Like, their diseases happen, and the story of human history is a lot of that, right? There's like entire cities, civilizations upended because of disease, because of smallpox, because of the bubonic plague, because of any number of other diseases, right? It's going to happen again. So assuming we have a government that looks similar to what we have now when the next disease happens, and we're not, in a, nuclear winter wasteland or something, right? Like, how do we do better? And again, the answer to me, the free solution is allow the medical community to be more dynamic in implementing solutions. And again, with consent of people involved, to allow things like, to me as an individual in 2020, like, would I have taken the risk of like possibly getting COVID to participate in a challenge trial with a vaccine? Yeah, I probably would have done that. Like, I would have been willing to take that risk. I was young, healthy. I knew that the chances of getting severe disease that would kill me were relatively low, because we knew by mid-year that this was something that more seriously impacted older folks. And yeah, there should be a way to do that. Like, I remember getting in an argument with a discussion with folks on a different radio station, on a different show that I was on, about this issue, right? And is that exploitative? Like, should we allow that sort of thing to take place? Challenge trials, like, if you pay people generous amounts of money to risk their lives to do that, is that fair? Is it exploitative? I'm like, well, we already do that, though. Like, we do that with the U.S. military. We ask folks, sometimes from low-income backgrounds, to go into service to prevent potentially risk their lives, in theory, to make our country safer. Right now, does it actually work out that way all the time? No, but that's the theory, right? We ask folks to risk their lives in order to serve the greater good. Why not do that with vaccination too? We should be able to do that. Again, you gotta set some rules, some parameters around that, and be able to exit those trials and understand the risk. Consent is the important part. Now I'll read this other comment from, again, assuming the same Facebook user. I was double vaxxed and boosted and got COVID twice. It didn't provide the immunity. I lived and was not hospitalized. Yeah, man, that's how it goes sometimes. It's said I had gotten double vaxxed. I got COVID. It stunk. Wasn't fun, but I made it through. And again, my criticism of this is that, like, the vaccine that the FDA is approving, like the fourth booster of, isn't as relevant anymore, right? We need to move quicker. It needs to probably look more like the flu shot, if it's a thing that's going to stick around, where they update it constantly based on the strains that exist, and you just need to be able to test that quickly. Like, there's so much cool stuff going on in this field, and some of it's risky. You know, going back to like the topic I started the show with, like there's a risk in that. There's risk and there's reward in doing research that can scare folks. The important thing is consent. It's to make sure that everyone knows the risks involved, to try to minimize the risks where you can, and then try to forge ahead with a sense of both responsibility and hope for solving a significant issue, in this case, disease. And are there ways that we could do significant and possibly risky infectious disease research in the United States more safely? Yeah, maybe. Again, does it make sense to like isolate that community more, not just have the safety protocols within the lab itself, but to isolate it on an island or something? I don't know. And I saw that thrown out on Twitter. I'm like, an island? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess you'd know, right? If you had a community of scientists who had to be quarantined, who are working on this stuff for the most serious diseases. Yeah, maybe that's the way we need to go. Maybe that's what makes sense. But I don't think we could be timid about this stuff. I don't think, like, again, I'm not going to be anti-technology, anti-progress, anti-science in this. And I know that gets thrown around a lot by the left, like, we're for, you're either for the science or against the science. No, that's nonsense, right? Like there's risk. There's good data, bad data. It is messy, right? But we have to live in that mess. The world is a complicated place. That sort of understanding of the world, that it is messy and complicated, underlies my libertarianism. It underlies my desire to not have a single central authority try to dictate all of this stuff, because there's so much that goes into this that politicians don't understand. Again, and when they err on the side of, well, if it saves just one life, they tend to overlook the consequences of not allowing liberty. In this case, with COVID vaccines and with COVID policy generally, it's a situation where we have ill-informed folks making serious decisions that impact our lives without all of the information, and oftentimes in a negative way. So when we have a lack of information, to me, it's err on the side of allowing freedom, err on the side of, there are a lot of smart folks out there who are looking for solutions. And unfortunately, politicians err on the side of, well, if we don't know, better do the thing that keeps everyone safe. Better do the thing that looks like we're taking action to keep everyone safe. Because that's the important part. So they got to look like they are the agent of change, doing things that keep us safe. And if it doesn't work out, they don't face the consequences for that in the same way that we do. They get credit for, at least I tried. No, that's not how I look at things. And I encourage you to understand when politicians are doing that. To understand when they're just trying to look like they're taking action to keep you safe, when in fact their policies are destructive. Yeah, going back to the Pfizer thing, did they do that? Yeah, they wanted to look like they're keeping us safe. Did they have all the data? Maybe not. It looks like it might have been a little bit misrepresented, a little bit overexcited, and that's a problem. But if we ran out of time, I was going to talk about some of the New York New York political situation and get to all that. But we ran out of time, of course. We talked about this. But thanks again for all the thoughtful and interesting Facebook comments and the phone calls. Appreciate y'all. I'll be back next week. Have a great week, folks. Take care.